everyone, Jennifer here with another Quapaw Farmers Market tutorial. Today we're going to be getting also into the fall and winter mood, and I'm going to show you step by step on how to pressure can specifically, beef stew. Okay guys, for today's recipe I'm going to go over some of the equipment that you're going to need and some of the produce that you're going to need. The first piece of equipment is a pressure canner. The second piece of bigger equipment is a water bath canner, which is optional. I'm only using this to process, sterilize, and to disinfect the jars. The second part is going to be your 7 quart jars, and then all of your produce and your choice of meat and beef stew seasoning. So here we have just the McCormick beef stew seasoning. I have my canning kit utensils, which I'm going to be using, the vegetables of your choice, and then a special thanks out to Quapaw Cattle Company for donating this beef for our video. All right guys, safety point to remember whenever you're doing canning is to always sterilize and disinfect your jars. Remember that you can always reuse jars and you can always reuse rings, but you can never reuse the lids. Once you've used these, they need to be discarded after you've opened the product. Now we're gonna go ahead and process the jars. We're gonna submerge all 7 quarts into the water bath canner at boiling point for 10 minutes to disinfect the jars inside, outside, and the lids and the rings. Okay guys, once we've filled up the jars all the way to the top with the hot water, we're gonna go ahead and add the ring and the lid back onto the top of the jar. You don't want to put this on tight. You want this to be very loose because you don't want the seal to create and for it to actually bond to the top of the jar. So just lightly set it on top. You want to hear the ring kind of jiggle on the top of the jar because you don't want this to be super tight. And then once you place all the lids on about that tightness, then we're going to go ahead and submerge it back into the water for 10 minutes at boiling point. Okay guys, now we're ready to start preparing our vegetables to create our beef stew. In this recipe, you're going to need about 18 medium-sized potatoes, washed, peeled, cut into about 1 inch thick. We're going to need about 4 to 5 medium-sized onions, just rough chopped. And then on carrots and celery, we're going to need about 3 cups of each one, about 1/2 inch thick. The reason why that this is not a small amount or small size is because we're going to be processing this at a very high temperature. And if it's not the right size, it's going to completely turn to mush, and we don't really want that for the texture of our beef stew. So we're going to go ahead and start prepping some vegetables. We've already rough chopped some of these ahead of time. So this is about the rough size you're going to need. Like I said, about a 1 inch for the potato, 1/2 inch for the carrots, and 1/2 inch for the celery. Just give it a rough chop, just eyeball it. Like I said, you don't want it to be too small because if it's too small, it's going to turn into mush once we process it. Ready to prepare our beef. If you're lucky enough to have it already cut up for you, which we do right here, then fantastic. If you don't and you buy it in the whole form, you'll have to cut it up into 1 inch cubes before you do this process. So now we're ready to go ahead and put all of the meat into a medium size or large size saucepan, just a little bit of oil. We're only wanting to brown the meat on all the sides. We're not wanting to cook it all the way through because the processing through the pressure canner will do that for us. All right guys, now I'm ready to put all of the ingredients together into a large saucepan or a stock pot, whichever one that you have. So we're gonna mix all the vegetables, the 2 packages of the seasoning, all of the meat, and then we're gonna cover that just barely over the top with water. Okay, once our beef stew has reached a boiling point, at that moment we're ready to start hot packing into our hot jars, which are already prepared and ready to go. Now comes the fun part. We're gonna go ahead and start ladling on our hot content into our hot jars. For this step, you're gonna need a ladle of any sort, your canning tongs, your bubble remover, and your canning funnel. Okay, so what we're gonna do is using our canning tongs, because the jars are still very hot, we're gonna go ahead and dump the water out of each jar, bring it back to the table, fill it with the hot content, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now we're ready to start filling. At this moment, we've removed the hot jar from the water bath canner, disinfected and sterilized, ready to go onto a heat-proof surface. So now we're gonna take our canning funnel, place it on top inside of the jar. Using your ladle, you're gonna start ladling in the hot content. So just grab several different scoops. The canning funnel helps to keep from spilling over, spilling product on the side. Get a good mix in there. If you want to twirl it around, spin it around inside of your stock pot just to make sure you're getting a good mix of all the vegetables and all the meat, you can certainly do that. while you're ladling some of the hot brine in there as well. So just keep pushing it down, and then once it's full, it will obviously let you know. So if it gets too full and you can't push anymore, just scoop it back into the stock pot. We want to do about a 1-inch headspace from the top. If you want to get the product down in there, just kind of push down with your bubble remover. Just like so. If I didn't explain it a while ago, I'll reiterate it. This is called hot packing, and the difference between hot packing and raw packing is hot packing is ladling hot product into a hot jar. This is typically used for foods that are extremely dense in content and that won't break down through the water, through the pressure canner process. Okay, so about the bottom of the first line of the top of the jar is about for a 1-inch headspace. If you have any questions about that, that's about 1 inch, a 1/2 inch, and then a 1/4 of an inch headspace. So making sure that all of the ingredients are submerged down, you want to take your bubble remover, this tool right here, get any air pockets out. The reason being for this is if you have air pockets, it can create bacteria, which could also create botulism, which is very toxic to the human body. So once you removed all of the air bubbles out, we're going to clean the top of the rim of the jar, and then we're going to place the lid and the ring on top. Okay guys, we're gonna go ahead and load up all of our 7 quarts of beef stew in here. We have put 2 inches of water in the bottom of the pressure canner and added just a touch of vinegar. This will help to keep it from turning a different color on the inside of the pressure canner. Now we're gonna put the lid on the pressure canner. So line up the areolas right here on the side. Go ahead and twist it. Once you hear it click, it's gonna know that it's locked. Okay guys, once you put the lid on your pressure canner, you wanna raise the heat to a medium-high heat. We wanna get the PSI dial gauge to a 10. That's gonna bring about 10 pounds of pressure. And once before that happens, the vent is going to steam for about 10 minutes. Once you set that timer, and once that timer is over, you're gonna place the 10-pound weight that comes with your pressure canner on the vent to set it, and then we're gonna set the timer for 1.5 hours. This is our final product. After we've pressure canned for 1 hour and 30 minutes, this is what it should look like. Don't forget to check your seals after 12 hours. After letting them sit at room temperature, you want to make sure that the seal is completely attached. If it is not, you want to discard of that product if you don't feel safe eating it, or you can probably put it in the fridge and eat it within the next 3 or 4 days. Don't forget all the equipment that you saw here today you can rent on our Quapaw Farmers Market page. Thank you to Downstream for filming this video, and we'll see you guys next time.